There's a song I wrote, Lucky Boy. Lucky Boy is out. It's out on YouTube. You can go and check it out. And that song was literally inspired by my second Pan-African University Debating Championship win, PAUDC. So in the build-up to the tournament, there was a lot of noise, within the community, and I had to step up.
RK Mali, got the beat and I'm killing it. You they see how them talk, Lee. See how them talk. You they see how them talk. See how them go for the jugular. Tell them I'm Dracula. Know that it's not enough, it hurts to be popular. I wish I was regular. Speak no vernacular. Lost some things I would prefer. Got some things I don't deserve. No matter all the story, Jaja got my back, don't worry. Saw the picture of my mama and my dad as I spoke. And I know I bring them glory, and at least I bring them hope. I'm just a lucky boy. I'm just a lucky boy. No, you cannot destroy. No, you cannot destroy. I'm just a lucky boy. I'm just a lucky boy. No, you cannot destroy. No, you cannot destroy. So many people won't bring me down. Cause I'm not the people they find it so simple to run me down. If you want make we dance the calypso, all those times you they talk I no one soak. Where you they call this young guy big ups bro. Believed in baby J to live find my way. Help me to find my way. Jaja find my way. Help me to find my way. Minstrel baby, help me to find my way. Find my way. Help me to find my way. Hit them with the back to back, never no relax. I have given everything you ask, where from the attacks. I am leader of the lonely pack, never carry last. If you know me, I'ma go repass. You might show me love, but I know you don't. At least keep my respect intact, nigga.
All right, welcome to the Structural Reasons podcast. I have Erasmus today. I'm so fucking excited to get this one going on. For anybody that doesn't know Erasmus, and I'm pretty sure that's not a lot of you, the next DCA of Panama Worlds, and the only person who is 2 times champion of PAUDC, which I'm sure we're gonna hear some great stories about that one in a bit. Before I ask my favorite question, make sure that you subscribe. A lot of you are still not subscribed to the channel and are watching these videos, so please do. And you can also check out, I've been starting to do fun reels and nice highlights from the episodes on whatever you want. TikTok, Instagram, those have specific memes, or you can watch the shorts on YouTube here as well. Thanks for the support. It really means a lot. So going back to Erasmus, again, welcome for you specifically. And how do you feel?
I feel really, really great. It's a Sunday. Usually it's a day for relaxation. So I'm in a good mood, trying to get ready before Mondays. So really, really good. How about you? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I've had to do some tasks today, but it's been good, and it's very sunny and great weather here in Sofia. And I'm surrounded by mountains and good stuff happening. So excited to get this going.
Nice.
My first question is kind of going back. So I would like to really learn more about you as a person. Um, Obviously, one of the main reasons that um, I think people know you is also the Shaft podcast. So I wanna shout out that, and you can find a link in the description, which I'm sure you put, and I'm sure that you guys will comment on this video as well, so people can definitely find you. And we had a great conversation there as well that people can check out. And there's many interesting episodes that you already did with Great African Debaters. I watched some of them, but I have to find some more time to watch more of them. But definitely great. You also talk football and other stuff that are very interesting. So people can definitely find something in that. So shout out for that, and you are definitely experienced in these conversations. Um, but before all of that, I want to learn more about you as a person and where it all started. So tell me a little bit about you growing up as a kid. What was Little Erasmus about?
That's a very interesting question. I don't even think more recently I've had to dig that deep, but my story is not too different from the average Ghanaian growing up in the contemporary or urban areas. So I come from a small community of the capital, Accra. That community is called Tema. And the reason why that community is quite unique is because it sort of harbored the overflow of people who had moved into the capital, and therefore it has most of our indigents are or most of the indigents of that community are people who moved from the rural areas and were first generation urban settlers. So my grandma was the first generation, then my mom, then myself. So we grew up in a very, very cosmopolitan part of Ghana, much more urbanized. And that meant that I was from a young age, I was already interacting with people from different tribal groups, people from different ethnicities, even nationalities, because we had a lot of immigrants growing up in Ghana. And therefore, my childhood was one where it was very, very diverse and met a lot of interesting personalities and characters. And that has been sort of like the building block to my life. So I grew up in, I would not say rich, but humble home to my mom and my dad, and then I had two other siblings. One is very, very young, so he came up when I was even way older. Then I attended school right there in Tema, where I grew up, and secondary school there. But then for my university education, I came up all the way to a place called Kumasi, which I'll be talking about later, where I actually started debate. But most of my foundation was built around studying science. So I wanted to become a medical doctor when I grew up, which is quite strange because I necessarily did not want to be a doctor. I wanted to be like a journalist, a writer, something like that, something very creative growing up. But once you're smart in school in Ghana, everyone wants you to read science and become a doctor. But it so turns out that uh, life led one or two things led to the other. And then in school, even after I was reading biotechnology, but after that, I was able to read my master's and then secure a job at Bank of America, where I work right now in finance. So that has sort of been the trajectory of my life.
You went all the way through the stories, but I guess for you growing up in such a dynamic environment, um, what were your aspiration during that? Was Were you excited about doing science and maybe becoming a doctor, or were you thinking about all of those stuffs, or were you uh, kind of pushed into that path by circumstances, but had your own dreams and aspirations? For me, for example, when I was a little kid, I was also smart and I was pushed to becoming a lawyer and all of those things. But um, all I wanted to do was arts and other stuff like that that I kind of grew out of. But now, when I'm older, I find myself coming back to them in that sense of the word. You're muted.
Sorry, you're correct. I think there's some semblance of that also within my story. Where I grew up, because it was very, very diverse, you were always changing your dreams and what you wanted to do. But I think always my ambition has been a bit to do something a bit more creative. So I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be a writer. I even wanted to be a detective at one point in time. But then because I was good with science also, it was not very hard to buy into the doctor dream. So it was something I also held close at one point. But like I was saying, it was not an option to do something creative. Everyone wanted you to do, like, within African communities and within cultural or conservative communities, you have the routine of doing the profession that is way more respected. It's more assured of bringing income home. So if you tell your mom that you want to be a musician or you want to be like an artist or anything of that sort, it was never going to be accepted. So I sort of always had it in my mind that in some way or form I'll pursue my art as hobby, but then I was going to do something official. I was going to do something academic. So I sort of lived with that focus. But yes, I had to face the pressure of having to succumb to being a doctor in the future.
What's one thing that you really miss about Ghana, except your family and the people, of course, because that's an obvious question. And what's one thing that you definitely don't, which I assume is also not going to be the family?
Yeah, that's very hard without the options. But I would say the food and the people around, because like I think I took for granted how much I could just eat what I want and everything was nice. And we have an especially rich cuisine. Um, what I don't miss, surprisingly, that's a lot. There are a lot of things I don't miss. It's the lifestyle to a certain degree. It was queuing for public transport. It was sometimes the weather, because sometimes it's very, very, very hot and sunny in Ghana. And I know people like it when you grew up in the West, you like the sun and everything, but it wasn't nice to be under it 247. Um, yeah, those two things for me, like sometimes the lifestyle, queuing up for public transport and institutions, and how sometimes they are very, very slow, and things move quite slowly. I think just the general quality of life being better over here is something I very much appreciate. But I still do miss my people back home. It's number one.
Yeah, I'm sure it's definitely a no-brainer. That's why I wanted to push you in digging deeper. Um, Favorite food? I've never had Ghanaian cuisine, so maybe you can talk a little bit about
You
that.
should
Is
you should
curious.
try it. The next time you're in London or anywhere else close, I'm going to take you to go and eat Ghanaian food. It's very, very diverse and it's really, really good. You will enjoy it. Trust me.
Nice, nice, great, great. I will definitely hit you up. Although, like, I'm never excited about going to the UK, but I am excited about the people. You see, so that will definitely happen sooner or later. Um, I, you've mentioned that obviously you had to pick the right path, if that makes sense. But I do know that you on the site make some music right now. So tell me a little bit more about that experience. Are you musically trained, or is it just more of a hobby for you? Or and what are the inspirations?
Yes. So I'm not musically trained. I wish I was musically trained. I think the experience that I've had with music, and especially what I do, is both worlds almost never meet. So most of the time it has been a struggle trying to stay a musician and trying to stay as a debater or seen as a quote unquote serious academic person. But music has always been a part of my life. I've been making music since I was 6, probably, and it's something I've always interacted with in one way or form. So the way I began was through church, because I grew up as a church boy within a religious community. So I always found myself in the church house because we lived very, very close to the church. And that meant that I started to play drums for the church anytime there were smaller meetings, then started to sing and then people kind of compliment you that you have a good voice. I was also very, very creative, and I used to write poems. So I think somewhere at a point in my life, I was like, wait a minute, I think I can write something on my own. So I just began to write my own music, and then I met a group of friends who used to go to the studio and record. So I started recording at the latter end of my life, but I'd always been in choirs, singing, and doing all that kind of stuff. In terms of the things that do inspire me, I've written about almost everything, because I'm inspired by stories all around me. I told you that I grew up in a very multicultural and cosmopolitan community. So you have a lot of different stories, and you sort of see the upper class and you sort of see the lower class. You see people who suffer and people who have to deal with pain all of the time, but you also see people who are also rejoicing all of the time. And it's how those emotions interact and your ability to put yourself in other people's shoes and then tell the story from their perspective. I found it to be very, very, very powerful, just stepping in people's shoes and then being able to tell their stories. But I'm also someone who challenges myself a lot. So when this wave of Afrobeats came in, I think the first one I listened to was Burna Boy. Like immediately, I told my friend that we need to record an Afrobeat song. He played a beat, and that was the one of the biggest songs I've ever recorded. So the inspiration is from all over, but mostly is from what I see, and then also ways in which I wish to challenge myself.
What are some interesting stories that inspired actual songs? Are there any debate stories or some part of that
There
journey?
is, there is. So I'll tell you. So one day I was uh, not mad. I was feeling a bit cocky, you know. So I wrote a debate diss track, if you'd say. It wasn't a diss track. It was something to brag, something uh, to brag about, a song that helped me brag. But I never released it. I never I never put it out because I knew it was going to ruffle some feathers. And like in debates, everyone is nice. Sometimes it gets a bit difficult, but everyone is generally nice. I also wrote one. There's a song I wrote, Lucky Boy. Lucky Boy is out. It's out on YouTube. You can go and check it out. And that song was literally inspired by my second Pan African University Debating Championship win, PAUDC. So in the build up to the tournament, there was a lot of noise, within the community, and I had to step up. And then after you win, there's a lot of narrative that goes around saying that maybe you were lucky, things like that. So I wanted to tackle it. So I named the song Lucky Boy, just to say that, well, I do feel that I am lucky in some respects, but then I also do work very, very hard, and I've earned the respect which I've got, which was a nice touch because it was also a nice song that people vibe to, and it was a story that people related to. So yeah, I have a couple of them inspired by debates. Good question.
Great stuff, great stuff. I love to hear it, and definitely go and check Erasmus and his music as well. I will link that as well because I have always found it interesting, and I've told on the podcast before that I really love music. It's something like a big part of my life, and I always love to meet artistic debaters in that kind of sense because I do think that it's always a very interesting look at debates from the artistic perspective because artists think very differently, I think, in these circumstances, and they always try to be original, and I really love
Yeah,
being original in debating in that kind of
yeah.
sense. So with all that being said, your story so far, how do we get in debating, and is there along the way some moments where now looking back you see that you were destined to become a debater, or i- was it something completely different and unnatural to you that you kind of got into when you became a part of the debating community?
Yeah, in some way or form, I think I have believed that there was some sort of destiny attached to this, and a lot of people who know my story allude to that it was almost prophetic, right? So let me start from the very beginning. During my childhood in school, I was always engaged in competitions, but I was an introvert. So I was a smart kid who just didn't want to stand up, answer questions, and things like that in class. So I almost never spoke up, but the grades did the talking. So that's the first part of it. And what I did find was that people loved it when you did well in competitions. People sort of go on your back. People supported you for the very first time. And it was a good way to have people now open up to you for the first time. People try and be nice to you. So I was always very motivated to do it very, very well and deliver at my best. So what happened was when I went into high school, we had a debate club, but I didn't hear of it until there was a time I scored the highest score on my English test. And anyone who knows any African uh, educational system, we study English as a course by itself, and it was very very difficult because it required comprehension, grammar, literature, a lot of moving aspects. So it was a very very difficult course to pass. But I'd always been good with that. I'd always been good at written English, spoken English, because I had a foundation of reading a lot of books, which my dad was very, very much interested in, always making sure you were reading the dailies, always making sure you were reading books. So when I scored that high test, my teacher asked me and said, there's a debate club in this school. Why have you never joined? So I joined, but it was quite late. And a lot of people who were within this debates club just didn't think it was the right thing to do to step off to give you the opportunity to speak. And most of the debates we were doing was what would now come to know as high school debating. So it meant that we were given the topic way in advance, and then you write and then you go and deliver. I found out quite quickly that I was not very strong at delivering, but I was very good at writing. And given that the people who mostly do the delivery are people who are good, already outspoken, it was very easy for them to take the shine, to step ahead and just not give you the opportunity. But I think I liked where I was. I liked to write because it required doing your research, putting the piece together, which was what I was good at anyway. But I got so good at it. Everyone wanted me to work on their scripts anytime we were going for debates competitions. But I made it also easy to not step up and then actually do the debating. So fast forward to the university, I was in my dormitory one time and they were recruiting for debaters. And I was not around, but one of my friends said, this guy is always doing competitions, so I'm going to put down his name. So they came back to me and they said, we're running a debate club. We heard you are good. We want you to join. And I checked the kind of debating it was, and they said it's British parliamentary, and you needed to prep for 15 minutes and then deliver a speech for 7 minutes on the go. So immediately I said no because I wasn't good at delivery and I was shy. But I think what helped was I had a trainer who very much believed in me. So he forced me to believe in myself, come out. And what I quickly realized was that because I was good with the material, because I had years of research and writing, that what I was delivering was good. So it meant if I become just a bit more confident and improve the delivery, I'll be better. So within that short space of time, I was miles ahead of most of my peers anyway. And therefore, by when it got to the dates of doing that competition, I was one of the very very first students on the list to be selected for my hall because within the university we debated by halls, or what you call it, frats or faculties or something of that sort. But unfortunately, uh, on the day of the competition, there was a disturbance within the school, and therefore, the competition was not able to continue. And what that meant was that we didn't have the opportunity to be recruited for the larger society within the school. And in addition to other circumstances within the society, I left debating. I didn't join again. I was no longer practicing anything. But I think what helped was because I was very, very popular in the first year, everyone kept on asking, when are you coming back? We think you should come back. We think you should be a bit more consistent. But a part of, and I just want to highlight just one of the overarching circumstances when there was a selection for the very first nationals. Although I was one of the best students or best debaters within our core, I was not selected. I think it was a mixture of many things. One, I wasn't very, very consistent and working hard because I had a split attention, but then also internal politics, which was happening. So eventually, I left the society, but I returned after 2 years and signed up for my first tournament. And the very first tournament I did, I won. So that sort of solidified the belief that this was something I was always meant to do and I'd always run away from. But in my mind, it was, I'm coming back to just do one more tournament and go away. But after winning, I think I became addicted to it. And then I showed up for the African Championships the next year. And then I won that one. So it now felt like, I think if I do this, I'm going to be good at it. And it just started a sequence of events where I kept on winning and I kept on finding a reason to go to the next tournament. And today I'm here.
I think what's going to be interesting for the audience to hear before I delve into these moments from your perspective is for you to kind of explain how the debating community in Ghana is structured, like and how the debating community in Africa in general works, because I do think that a lot of the audience is interested to hear more, especially since I feel like it's in the past few years during COVID, a lot of African debaters have kind of come onto the scene, and people more and more learn about them. So it's always interesting to understand how debating is structured in different parts of the world. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. I think the African community is one of the most vibrant and one of the most talented communities in the world. And there are a couple of ways to describe it. First of all, debating attracts the smartest people on campus, attracts some of the most smartest people on campus. Especially the way in which it was set up in Ghana, most of the people who participated in debates were those who were involved in the politics, those who were involved at the helm of affairs. So it had a way of attracting some of the most powerful people and some of the most smartest people around. So there's a lot of raw talent, right? But the environment in which I grew up in was very much focused on grassroots recruitment. So they go to rooms, and the way in which our university, obviously, like all universities, is in another town, another community. So you have residents in there. So we go into the residence and then we pull people out, and then we ask them, are you interested in debating? We are going to train you, things like that. So it's quite effective at just being able to identify the right talent. But most of the debating happens within these universities. So these universities create the debate societies, and all these debate societies come together to create the circuit as we know it. And we eventually meet ourselves during nationals competition. So we have the Ghana University Debating Championships, which is the nationals competition, which then is the opportunity for people to debate over there and then be able to show themselves. And then we have the Pan-African University Debating Championships, which then gathers all the universities from the different countries and allow them to compete against themselves. So there are a lot of levels of competitions, which allows for some of the most refined speakers to come out. And much more recently, we've begun to increase the outreach within high schools, because debating was not very strong within high schools, but we're beginning to increase the outreach to ensure that the debaters who are coming up into the universities already have the foundational skills to be able to improve. But like I said, debating within Africa attracts some of the most smartest people. So some of these guys that you meet have the raw talent. I think where we end up missing out a lot is training people on how to speak, on how to think, use the knowledge and information that they have, power it in the right direction, and to be able to articulate that knowledge very, very well.
So, how old is debating in Africa? I guess I'm asking because from for Bulgaria, for example, it's been around since the 90s, but it's mostly gained some tension, some attraction in the, let's say, last 10 years, and it's been an ongoing process, but it's still kind of small. But from what I can understand, the African community is actually quite large and very very diverse. So what's kind of the historical background there?
Yeah. So I think I think we'll benefit from having sort of like a historical perspective. We need to understand that debating for the large part of the African history existed within Southern Africa, which is easy to imagine because you have universities like UCT, University of Cape Town, even Wits University, which is more of a Black institution, where ones which came out uh, way later. So even though I can't put a date to it, this goes way into the 90s, where these things were being practiced, where University of Cape Town was having debates, and therefore they needed to expand the ecosystem. So they were introducing debate to a lot of institutions within Africa. And it stayed there for a very long time until the 2010s, when it traveled into West Africa. I think there were a couple of people who were largely responsible for this, and I might be missing some of their names because I'm a newbie as much as possible. But as a result of doing things like the shafts, I've come to know about these things. People like Erica Samoa of Speech Forces, whom a lot of people from Africa know, saw what debating was doing, especially within South Africa. And when it came into Ghana, there was some appetite and a drive to be able to push it within West Africa. There was a PAUDC which happened, I think around 2013 or 2014, I think, in South Africa. And there were a lot of West African institutions who attended for the first time and then saw the way in which debate was organized and said, no, we think our universities are going to like this, so we need to take it out there. So that period began the spread of debates towards different parts of Africa, and we saw it within West Africa, and this also continued into East Africa and in 2018, East Africa hosted, I think, one of their very first Pan-African University Debates Championships. So debates has been going on for so long, for over 20 years now. And I think one of the biggest highlights for us and the way in which we were consolidated was in Botswana. I think, was it 2009 Worlds? So the very first time PAUDC was hosted was in 2009. And it was because they wanted to host Worlds in Botswana, but Botswana just didn't have the structure to host Worlds. So they were like, you know what, let's host the PAUDC. And if a Pan-African Championships is successful, then we know that they can host the World University Debate Championship. So that was where the society was consolidated. And that's when you began to have Pan-African University Debating Championships, and which now have universities going in there. And then the outreach for debates continue to spread, and now we're seeing participation from teams in North Africa. So the the circuit is really, really, really huge, really, really diverse. In fact, there are a lot of debaters from high school and university who never come up to the world stage to compete in European competitions or to compete in world championships. But the pool of people out there to select from is massive. I hope that gives you a clear picture of what the circuit looks like.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important to understand because I think even though it might seem different from the online perspective, but the European debating community, especially in some of these countries, is very small. It's it's and international, even to some extent. That we always need more people, and I feel like we need to tap into the African debating circuit and bring more people
Yeah.
into the international scene, because I think this will bring a lot of not only like diversity of opinion, but like literally people who can do a lot of stuff, who can make more competitions, who can create content and all of those stuff, which we definitely need more and more to kind of grow debating as a whole,
Yeah.
to be more recognized, because it helps a lot if we have more and more even countries kind of recognizing debating. So from that perspective, is debating recognized within like African institutions? Is it something that like gets a lot on the news, or like for example in Bulgaria, it's not a big deal that much, even though they would talk about when me and Ruman, for example, went to the
Yeah.
finals of Worlds. And are there like, for example, some famous people who debated back in the day?
Yeah, so I think fairly so. Debating is quite recognized by the institutions, mostly because sports is a big thing. So most universities are publicly funded universities, so they rely on reputation. So things like debating give them boost their reputation just within the space in which they are in. Plus, I think it's done by some of the biggest universities. So KNUST, Wits University, University of Cape Town, University of Lagos are big participants in this. So I think the recognition is widespread within universities. In terms of adoption within mainstream media, it depends on who you speak to, because there are important contacts within the media space. So we do get a lot of media representation, and in Ghana, I will not say it's fairly easy, but if you put together these kind of things, it's quite easy to catch their attention. In terms of important people who have debated, I'm important. I've debated, and I'm popular within the country. So maybe that's one example. But no, on a more serious note, we have a lot of journalists who were previously debaters. But I think because of the age of debates, especially within Western Africa, we do not have like big, very, very big people, but we have reputable people who are working on TV stations, radio shows in South Africa. There's someone called Clyde Dixon, who is a huge broadcaster within South Africa. He was a debater. We have a former debate champion, Jamie Mighty. He's very huge now. He's a huge lawyer within South Africa, and he hosts something called the African News Desk, which is a very, very huge platform. Uh, there are some of our people who have gone on like TV shows and are huge, and you have them in pockets and spaces like that's where they are doing really, really well. I think we've had conversations with some of them on the shafts, but would definitely have more, and you'd begin to see some of them.
Yeah, that's absolutely great, and I love to see it because it's, I don't know, it's really cool to to get this, maybe from my perspective, niche activity, and to see the impacts that it has on people. And it does attract like literally one of the smartest people that you might know there, which is like a public testament to the
Yes,
value of debating, if that makes
yes,
sense. And I always like, I think what will happen in Bulgaria as well is that we'll see more and more mainstream successful people that have done
yes,
debating in the past, and it's gonna help a lot with when we work with kids, and we can say, look, this person, they used to debate, so you can
yes.
be like them, and things like that.
Exactly.
So it's great to see that that you have these inspirations, and you definitely continue to have them in the future. Um, I guess this is a great segue to um, the more competitive part of your journey. So tell me specifically, before we get into the international scene, the your international it's still international, but I would say like the world scene, if that makes sense. So before go to
Yeah.
the worlds and that experience, tell me a little bit about these two championships. So the Pan African University Debating Championship is very big, but tell me a little bit more about it. Is it what's I don't know what's the vibe at PAUDC? I've never been.
No, I say that as much as possible, we need to give people the experience of PADC. It's literally one of the best tournaments in the world. Um, it's it's a huge tournament in the sense that it brings together like teams from all parts of Africa. So I think it's one of the very few platforms that gives us a chance to meet each other in person. So I think within Africa, the universities continue to maintain a good relationship on an administrative levels, and therefore their students also have good relationships. So PADC, especially when it happens in person, we go to just like with all tournaments, we go to one person's university and all of us begin to camp over there. So the diversity is amazing. You meet debaters from the south, from the east, from the west, and everywhere, but then it's also very very competitive. Like I said, most intellectuals are usually attracted to the space, so you hear of people who were really smart within their schools who have now joined debates, and you're always looking forward to facing them. So it's the elite of the elite in terms of competition, but then also it's contains a lot of rivalry. There's strong rivalry between the West and the South, usually spearheaded by Wits University, and then also West Africa, KNUST. But then also we have competition within South Africa itself, which gets represented there from between UC, University of Cape Town, and then more of the Black institutions. So it's very very fun, but I think at the end of the day, in as much as the rivalry exists, people are very, very respectful to each other. People want to know each other. People want to experience each other culturally, like because we are very, very curious about South Africa. We want to learn about the culture. We want to learn about what goes on over there. And as much as possible, the hosting nation tries to give us a feel of their community. So when we went to Tanzania, for example, we were eating the local dish. We found ourselves in Zanzibar, almost having a vacation. So it's really really fun. And like, I think the whole point of PADC Fest is to have fun, and then there's the competitive bit of it where like the nerds sort of start having a go at each other, but it's holistically very very fun.
Was your first win at PODC the moment that you were hooked on debating, if that makes sense? Because obviously, I feel like throughout each person does something very competitively, like be it a sport or some other activity, and it was definite for me for debating the same. You with time, as you get better with it, you get more hooked. But there's this moment of like, oh, I really really love this, and it does come for me with the sweet victories after the suffering,
Mm.
if that makes sense. So was that the moment for you, the first time that
No,
you
no. I think the funny thing is I was more resolved to do debating at my lowest moment. So I'll tell you the story. We used to travel to Nigeria to debate, and we used to go by road. And on this particular occasion, I went to a state in Nigeria called Calabar. So going from Ghana to Nigeria, the capital of Nigeria, Lagos, is 14 hours by road in public transport. Then going from the capital to Calabar is another 14 hours.
Mm.
So, so I literally did a 28-hour journey into Calabar. And I was still in school, so I was a broke student. So I had no money. And when we went there, um, of course, we poorly budgeted. So we ended up running out of money. And for some reason I had to stay in Calabar. So I got stuck. And mind you, I went on this trip without telling my parents. Because for my parents, they like the idea that I'm doing an academic activity, but they were not going to fund it or they were not going to pay for it. So I had to do it by myself. So obviously I didn't get their permission before traveling. So my dad didn't know I was outside the country. Um, and you know how parents get when you have to travel outside the country. Who are you going with? Just your friends, that sort of thing. So getting stuck was not ideal because now I had to, in all humility, pick up my phone and be like, can I get some money to come out of here? And now it became a challenge because payment systems are not very well structured across Africa. So getting the money to me even was a problem. But it was the point of shame because then the whole community had heard about it. And my mom was like ringing all my friends saying her son is missing. And everyone was sort of having a laugh. So after I was coming back from that trip, after I came back from that trip, my parents were like, we are not letting you debate again. This is the last time you are debating. But 2 days after, there was a tournament. And I told them, oh, I was going to school early because I needed to do some things. And I was genuinely going to school. I don't know what happened. I ended up at the debate tournament. I ended up at the new debate tournament just a few days after I got back from this trip where I had to spend like a long time away because of the challenges. I think that was when I was like, look, I'm addicted to this thing. And if I'm going to be addicted to it, then I have to do it right. I can't continue to stay in this space and not, I'm already willing to give off everything. So why not really give off everything? And that was when I knew I wanted to do this. And that was in 2017. The following year, that was when I won the Pan African University Debate Championships. And the irony of it is, because I never expected to even attend a Pan African University Debating Championship, after I won it, I was very satisfied, and I said I wasn't going to debate there again. The story of how I eventually go back to debating there again is perhaps for another question, but essentially the only reason I had to do another championships was because KNUST was hosting it the following year. And obviously, if you are hosting it, the responsibility on you to perform well over there means you need to bring all of your best debaters in. And that's how come I went again. If not for that, I would have stopped in 2018.
Interesting. So I find a parallel between you and Ruman, and he tells that story in his episode of like
Yes.
he was hiding from his parents to do debate competitions. So did your parents come around, and when did that happen?
Yeah,
Uh,
so no, sorry. They did. I think they came around when I'll tell you how they came around. They came around when they realized that debate was making me travel around the world without any of their money. So they asked, "Why are you going to?" I was like, "Thailand." They were like, "Why are you getting the money to travel?" I was like, "It's sponsored." Then that's it. You've won because I think just like I was explaining, and especially if you're at my age, and most people who grow up or who I grew up around with had never even seen an airport before. Like it's not because you had no business casually like traveling to. Because since I came here, I realized people travel, go on vacations with their kids, things like that. Where I'm from, to travel outside the country was a luxury. To sit in a plane was a symbol, was a status symbol. So when they saw me now sitting in planes, going to other countries, taking pictures from other countries, they were like, "I think this thing is good. You should keep up with it. How can we help you?"
yeah, it's a similar experience for me, especially when I was able to fund it myself, which took a while, but that's it is what it is. So you've mentioned you did the first one and then came back around and did the second one, maybe out of pride, and you want to hashtag represent, if that makes sense. Um, what are some of the highlights between these two championships? Were you so obviously at the second one you were one of the favorites? Were you
Yeah.
still a favorite at the first one, or were you? Did nobody expect you coming? What was the main rivalries and kind of actors in the first one?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting story. Almost everyone in Africa probably knows the story. But when I was going for my first championship, no one knew me because, like I told you, I'd been out of the circuit for long. So I just come in 2017, won the first championship, did that trip to Nigeria. So in 2018, like people knew I was good, but not win PAUDC good. Like, because to win PAUDC, you needed to be on God status. And usually we have people who are marked as successes. I was not one of them. And mind you, for context, by 2018, no West African team had ever won. The championship had been dominated by the South. So when it was being held in Tanzania, my coach, who was also my teammate, but back then my coach called me and said if I wanted to participate. And I was like, why not? If I can, I would. And the funny thing about that story was I didn't have a passport to even travel. I had zero expectation of going to the championship. So when I was told I had to arrange for a passport quickly, but it didn't come until a day after the championship started. So actually when the contingent left and they had to leave me behind and I had to travel separately. But what I wanted to highlight was that within that trip, there were people who were talking about or who is going to win the next championships, and there were teams who were being mentioned, but my team was not being mentioned at all, and it sort of gave me some motivation. I was like, yeah, I'm going to surprise them. Um, I'll be very honest. My coach, who was my partner at that time, had been to multiple PADCs. I think he has been to two. So he had some experience and he had a reputation because he was very, very good. He was seen as one of the best speakers in Africa at that time. And he had won the Ghana national championships. But no one knew me. No one knew me. So I think I was the surprise package at that tournament. So I came in there with zero expectation at all. And the way in which the tournament happened, and because I had come in very late, meant that I had not met a lot of people at the opening ceremony and other social events. And of course, being as antisocial as I was back then, I was not even speaking to people. So something happened on the ninth of breaking. I think after break night, we went out to socials. We were announced as the first breaking team, and nobody knew what team it was because people who were in the top room knew who we were, but nobody could point out and say these are the guys who broke first. Everyone was like, "Oh, KNUST, just that." So I was actually speaking to someone. The person is my friend now, Miriam. I was sitting outside my door, and they were like, "Why are you so sad? Is it that you did not break?" And I was like, "No, we broke." I was like, "Why? Where did we break?" I was like, "First." And they were quite thrown away. Like, wait, you've been walking around here, you broke first. So that's how unexpected it was. But by the time we got to the out rounds, everyone knew about us. And I think what really helped us at that championship was we there was a unique style we had been developing within training. And myself, my speaking style was something that a lot of people had not seen before, right? So people were just not ready for it, and we were also one of the very first people who began to think more about debates as a strategy and not just about saying the right things or saying the point or being brilliant. I like I told you, I was not like the guy who was the most eloquent or could say like a thousand things at once. So it was now about thinking more broadly about debate strategy and how to beat people. And my partner is also super brilliant with that. So we won the tournament. We set an West African record for points breaking, and he got first best speaker. I got second best speaker. So guess no one was prepared for it, but we eventually dominated.
That's a great story of kind of coming out of nowhere. Um,
Yeah,
Before I ask you about the second championship, I kind of want to learn about what's the African debating meta. You know, we always, especially nowadays, talk about the meta. So, what was the meta back then? And I assume that nowadays it has grown and probably been influenced by uh, all of those like workshops in the last 4 years and the
yeah.
online debating. But what was the meta back then? What were the most biggest debaters doing? Was it more of a it's a very stylistic play, or was it more about saying a lot of stuff, content dumping?
Yeah, so it's always been style. It's never been about matter. I'll tell you what's interesting. A large part of, cause in Africa, like seeing me, some of the very people you see, we had to influence our own kind of debating. Like a lot of people grew up with mentors, coaches, like a system where you churn out debaters. We didn't have that, and we took up debating when we were like matured, right? So most of the training that we did, and of course, it was more expensive to fly in speakers. So we used to watch a lot of these workshops and a lot of the top debates on YouTube. So I remember I had like tons of YouTube videos. So what ended up happening was that the debates that we thought were the nicest started informing how we debate in general. And this is very, very difficult to describe. I'm going to try my best. It's very, very difficult. But you do realize that some of the guys who were winning in these spectacular debates had to do spectacular things. So if you think of the 2016 final, the kind of speech that Bo gave, it's not a speech he would give every day. If you think uh, if you think of Dan Lahav, and the kind of speeches that he had to give, you realize that these are not speeches that he has to give in every single debate to win. So I just want to point out that there was a brand of debates which we were now hooked onto, which we were now learning. So speakers like Shenguli, MDG, these were the guys that we were now modeling our debates after. So we sort of went to the top. So, and the way to prove this is if you listen to African speakers, one of a traditional weakness associated with us is that we don't prove our things. We have grand ideas, we have bright ideas, but we are not proving them very, very well. And it comes from that era. So it was more about the style and the way in which you entered into speeches and the way in which you delivered the arguments rather than the tiny, tiny bits you were saying under them. So for most of us, once you were able to come up with a very, very brilliant idea within the debates, you most likely would win, which was not to say that it was poorly mechanized or so, but there was less emphasis on how many more points you could give and more emphasis on creativity, ingenuity, in the way in which you delivered your arguments.
That's very interesting. It reminds me somewhat of what happened in Bulgaria in terms of like there was established way to do debating, and then when I was being brought up in debating, we were kind of mm, trying to bring and fighting even to bring what we learned from the international scene, watching these same speeches, Bosel, MDG,
Yeah,
especially the European ones, and trying to implement it into our own
yeah,
circuit. And what I remember about it, that it was a struggle. Like there was even some
yeah,
like people who are fighting back against it. Like we
yeah,
were, we always wanted to prove that this is the right way to debate, if that makes
exactly.
sense.
Yeah.
So is it a similar experience, and were there any highlights of like when did you felt like you were getting the upper hand on that
Yeah,
big fight?
yeah, it is, and it still happens till today. There are people who just don't want. Uh, all this noise about mechanizing and things like that. Like they just want to debate, they just want to share ideas and go at each other's throats, right? But uh, it was very similar in the sense that I think one of the very first things that happened to me after I came back from Worlds was that I lost a lot of debates. I lost a lot of debates because I had seen a new style and I was like, guys, this is how these people are debating. What we are seeing on videos is just 1 out of 10 ways these guys would take up debate and attempt to run this case. Everyone is not attempting to run a big case in every single debate. So I was now pointing them out. I was pointing out to videos. I was like, watch round ones and round twos instead of watching open finals and semi-finals. Watch round one and twos. You realize that the debate is very, very different. You have to mechanize things like that. And it was tough. Like we were losing a lot of points, losing a lot of rounds. But I think slowly, especially as the world came online, it became very easy to sell the message because they were going into debates and they were experiencing these things which were saying. So people began to adjust their styles to meet this metric. And these days you have more effort to see it mechanized. Sometimes I'm quite sad because we've lost a bit of our originality. And ourselves as a team, Mandy and myself, sometimes hate it. We would rather just take the hit and run the case that we want to run, even though sometimes there's an easier, more intuitive, but boring case that does not um, fit to the richness of that does not feed into the richness of the debates. But we'll be more willing to run something that we think is fun, that we think is far more core to the debates than a lot of judges would like us see to it. So yeah, it was similar in those respects.
It will come back around, and I definitely think that you have this. You have definitely had these moments where you are trying to perfect a lot of this mechanistic stuff that everybody wants to perfect when they are going for international competitions. And once you are able to do them and do it like the guys in the videos, you start implementing more and more of your own style into it, and kind of meshing the two things together. I would love to see more and more of that, because I think this is the beauty about it. And I feel like at least from my experience with African debaters, I've loved especially that about them, that you can see that they're kind of obviously seeing the same videos, looking at the same meta of debating, but you can also see sprinkled in some of that originality and that different, even perspective into these debates. Sometimes even with the jokes themselves, I think you
Yeah,
can you
that's
can
true.
definitely recognize that, but also like more I don't know, like grounded analysis. So my question here, like what do you think is the mm, are there any similarities and huge differences between now the different styles of debating, and uh, can you think of an example of that you've seen in the last worlds, or that you've participated, maybe a moment that you were like, I'm gonna do a little bit something a little bit different, and it paid off.
Yeah, so if I understand your question well, are you saying difference in style that I implemented or I had to do, or something that I observed from another person?
It could be either way. It could be either way.
Yeah, so very good question. I think one person who, and this might not be the default answer. This answer might not like sound great to a lot of people, but one person whose style I think changed a lot of things for me, or changed my perspective a lot, was Tim Pulich. And the reason I'm saying is a bit controversial is because like people like to think that he's the kind who spews out a lot of matter and not necessarily like focus on style. But I think what he was able to do quite effectively was combine how we speak as ESL with the EPL kind of way, and still find a way to dominate. And I think that's why he dominated really, really well. You see him spending a minute or two of his time intentionally doing a lot of analysis in framing to create a very, very good picture before he begins. The difference or the contrast I see is previously we used to assert our framing instead of proving it, instead of proving why it's the most plausible thing. Because when we give the frame, it intuitively sounds convincing. When we say this debate happens much better, or this debate is clearly happens in a developing world where we see these parallels, judges know it's true, and everyone around hears it, knows it's true. But people find a way to refute it. And I found out that he was quite persuasive in a way in which he was able to ground most of these intuitive things in analysis before being able to add those points. So that was sort of the trajectory I began to go for in terms of just finding words to give to the kind of intuitions and emotions and the great ideas that you want to implement within debates. Do you agree? Do you agree with this? Because I know not a lot of people would agree.
Well, I think Tin is a very different speaker from me. So is I've never even really sat down and um, analyzed his speeches in depth because they can never work for me. I am person that's and you can see like the speeches that I like are Rumen speeches because like
Yes.
obviously like because I'm influenced by listening to Rumen, but also because like a lot of the time when Rumen speaks, I'm in the same team. So like I've I think when Rumen brings a case and the way that he structures a case, we're very much on the same page of like what I want him to do. He usually does in that
Yeah.
perspective. Obviously, he has his own style and these things like that, but that's what I want to see from my first speaker, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the similarities between Tina and Ruman are not big. Some of them are in what you said because Roman can
Yeah.
speak a bit faster and can cover a lot of ground, but we always try to do that in the context of like pinpointing one big thing and
Yes.
proving the hell out of it, if that makes sense,
Yes.
and
Yes.
really going into deeper into that specific point, and obviously like doing the groundwork of like why is this the biggest point in the debate, why is this the most important thing. So from my perspective this is the four speeches that I really like. um with that being said, when did you start going more and more into the international scene, and uh what uh what was uh, what was the feeling when you firstly started going into international competitions, and did you struggle at first, or was it like your first competition back then when you just won the championship?
Yeah. So I would say that where do I start the story from? I think one of the biggest threats to being able to improve is failure. And at the same time, it should be one of the biggest catalysts for change. I'm someone who is never been afraid to start again. I never shy away from failure. I embrace it. I embrace the struggle. When I see something that I struggle at, or I cannot do, or I'm very, very bad at, it tells me, okay, great. It means that just a little effort in, and I would be able to see results, and I'll be able to produce it. And I think that was the distinguishing factor between myself and a lot of other debaters that I share the same podium with back at home. Because after, just like you know, after winning the championships, instead of me going this way, I always go this way. I get more depressed, I get more sad, start contemplating why I sacrifice so much for this sport, start asking myself, what exactly do I gain from this sport? And it was sort of that same rhetoric came up again around 2019 when I won the Pan-African University Debating Championships for the second time, because it took a lot from me in terms of sacrifice. Around that time, we went to Worlds in 2020, and then I discovered a whole new world. But unfortunately for me, my partner, who was very, very good, and it was like we were forming this great partnership that people could certainly believe can challenge on the international level. He had spent a lot of time in debating, and he was tired, which was legitimate because he had spent a lot of time debating. But I felt my time was not done. So I was conflicted between retiring or continuing. So when the pandemic came and competitions began to move online, a lot of the old debaters stopped. They stopped debating. They were tired. Why should they start this new game all over again? But I was excited to see how I test, because I felt, okay, Worlds once in your lifetime is not enough to test myself against some of the guys from the best institutions like Oxford, Cambridge, because I believed in myself and I believed that I was good enough to win against them. And it was not from a point of bragging. It was a case of I need to test myself against them and see where I stand. So when we came into the online regime, it was very important that people like me who had already built some of the experience stay around and continue to compete. But it was very difficult. It was very, very difficult, Nikki. We were fourth in countless times. We go into tournaments, and sometimes the whole of Africa is rooting behind you, but you don't break. And you know, the platforms were so shit and messed up. Some of these platforms, like, they can't even hear your audio. We were struggling with internet, and the whole landscape was messy. But what I know is that whenever things are bad, you need to find a way to stay. You need to find a reason to continue. You need to find a reason to win. That reason is far more important than any subsequent actions that you take. And for me, my reason was we needed to expose ourselves to the international stage, and we needed to build some capacity within ourselves to compete on that stage. And people like me needed to stay to just show the world that we're good. I was like, I just need one person to say that, well, people from Africa are good. And that's what made me stay. So fast forward, when we sort of got a hang of the online era and we saw a lot of speakers coming in, Andy and myself sat down and we said, look, there's a way to do this thing. There's a way people succeed. And the way the trend of debating and as it was going did not favor Africa, and they did not see us making results. We had begun to make some ESL finals. Like, we had begun to prove ourselves that we had the stuff, but we weren't winning. And we said we needed to go way more than ESL finals. So we sat down, we had a series of meetings. We sat down, we said, what did we need to do? So things like have a catchy name, Andy and Erasmus, put up a brand for ourselves. We said we needed to create a network. We needed to make sure, because we realized that when judges know you, they rank you better than when they don't. So it was the tiny details, putting them there and then writing subsequent actions. So right now, after debates, we don't care. We go for feedback. We don't take feedback by text. We hold calls with the individuals. And it was little things like that, which now began to put us in the faces of people, and people began to realize, okay, they are good. If they are good, we also needed to consistently prove it that we were good. So it meant adjusting our styles. And of course, there was the bad side of it, sometimes the blatant racism that you face. But we knew this was what we were up against. Like, you can't change someone's reaction towards you, but you can change the way in which you continue to deliver and continue to have results. So it was now being able to lay the patterns for each and every judge who was judging us and what we needed to do. And these things helped us to come up with a blueprint which now saw us breaking open, appearing in finals comfortably. it's just so much of a shame that we couldn't get to compete in things like the World Championships. But this was a very, very well thought out and laid out plan from a call that we had way back in 2021. But that was how the journey has been.
So there's a lot of to unpack there. I think the obvious highlight is kind of continuing on, and you mentioned that part of it is just to kind of, I don't know, prove something to the international debating community, if that makes sense. And I think that with what you've done so far, you've opened a lot of doors for the people who um, are coming after you, and I think that's very important. That's one of my motivations as well when I was starting to debate, and I definitely did not come from a more famous circuit as well, so I definitely know the struggle from that perspective. Um, what what keeps you going apart from this general motivation? Because there are a lot of moments throughout the journey where you just don't really see any point and start doubting that initial inspiration to do it. So, what kept you going?
That's a very, very loaded question. What keeps me going? I think like I was saying, it's fine. You need to find any reason, and I think in most times I found out that the reason doesn't matter. Look, you need to agree with yourself. Is this something that you need to do? Because if you don't, then don't waste your time on it. But I do know that if if all things are possible and I get the best outcome from this, what are the benefits I stand to gain? Or what are the good things that can come out of it? Are these benefits or are these good things something that I cherish and something that I want to see come to pass? If it is, then there's no other excuse for me anymore. I need to find just any reason to continue doing this. And there's a quote that someone said to me that my mentor says to me. He says that if you stick around the barber shop long enough, you would get a haircut. So it's a question of time and commitment. Once you are ready to give these two things, you know it will definitely come to you. So it is, for me, it is anticipation of it. It's continuing to sell to myself the dream that one day an African can win worlds. It's sitting here and knowing that there's been no African who has broken at an open before. There's no one who has got into the open category at worlds. It's things like that, and knowing that I can't let these things be the representation of who we are as a people. I know that is not true. I know that is not what our abilities should translate or transcribe to. And no one is going to be concerned about this if we are not concerned about it. So I need to find a way to stick within this game. I need to find ways to evolve because I also know that I'm going to be bored. So I need to find new challenges. So if I'm to summarize it, it's one, continually challenging myself, right? You get to a certain height, but there's always another height you can get to. If you get to finals and maybe it's fine, now, maybe now start winning it. If you win one, maybe not, why not win two? And it is this same morbid, insatiable greed which exists within humans, which I've managed to tame in some way or form to sort of guided towards more of a noble ambition. And for me, that keeps me going. That's what keeps me awake, to be very honest.
So, what do you think is gonna be some of the memories that are gonna come back to you when you're old and have finally retired from debating, from this international journey of struggle and perseverance?
Yeah, for me, it's it's funny because I've always said I've been retired for so long now. I've been retired since I don't know 2022, Everything else that you see me do, like I always say that the dedication and passion and efforts that I put into debate, I no longer put that level. If I was to do it, I probably would have no life. So I've been retired since. But what I quickly realized is that even over here, when people have jobs or careers, they have pet projects. Some people want to help people with terminal diseases. Some people want to volunteer their time somewhere. Some people want to make a contribution. And for me, if I'm able to engage in a hobby that makes a meaningful contribution to people's lives, because I do think we affect lives positively. There are, for me, some of the stories of people whose lives have changed. Luckily for me, some of my students, some of them are working now, they're in school, and you help them debate and they come and tell you, thank you. These are big moments. I don't know for anyone, but these are happy moments. It puts a smile over my face. That, like, even Andy was my student. Um, his life is now changed. He works in Hong Kong where he has a stable life. And looking at some of these things always puts a smile on my face. It lets me know that if I go today, the legacy is secure. I remember I told people, I said this back in the circuits, that it was about doing it and proving that it was possible and not doing it for myself. And when we won the Pan African University Championships for the first time, I told them that, like, it's about making it possible, and after that, everything else was going to come. And we now see people or students enter into the society and say, "I want to win pants." That was not normal. That was not normal. So let me paint a picture for you. A student can go into Oxford or wants to go into Oxford because for them, when they get into Oxford, they want to win worlds. So you meet kids and they were like, I want to win worlds. And for them, it's a realistic dream. We need to make that dream realistic for the African child. They need to be able to walk into the university and say, oh, I want to win worlds. Not that everyone will win worlds, but it should be a legitimate dream. And we need to make that possible for each and every one of them. And I've done it at every level. When I said it for PANS, we did it. When I said it for international tournaments, I said, we can break open. We did it. And it's about opening that possibility now also on the grand stage. And we already saw it. People like Prosper and Vincent, Elisha and Wesley getting to the open final stage. These things are huge, and I appreciate it's not big in the grand scheme of things for the entire world, but for Africa, these things are huge. They are immense, and we need to keep on setting up those precedents so that those coming after won't need so much, because we are so close. We can't let go of it. We are too close.
The power of belief is very strong. I do think that manifestation, even to a certain extent, it helps you a lot. And a lot of the time we are the ones who put imaginary boundaries in our life, and removing those is extremely important for us to get better. Even if we in the journey change our minds, it's extremely important, not only for us but for other people. And it's also obviously a very rewarding experience regardless of what you achieve. Like, I never won worlds, but I did take away a lot from becoming better because I wanted to and because I put my mind to it. And it showed me and uh, a lot of people who also might want to do that it is possible if you put your mind to it to become whatever you want to become in this particular sense. And it I think especially nowadays it's important to drive inspiration from this perspective, and it's not only driving inspiration from like somebody who is super rich, super successful, they are on social media and you want to be the next person, but you also need to see people who are much close to you, somebody who is your friend, your teacher, your somebody from your neighborhood, your country, that does these things, even at a smaller scale, if that
Yeah.
even matters in these particular senses. So our small thing of debating community, um, maybe it's not gonna save the world, but it's gonna make it a little bit better, and that's very, very important. Um,
Yeah.
so moving away from debating for a little bit, and I'm gonna go back to it when I ask you the gold question, because I have to ask you. But um, now that you're retired, also like you're retired in your DCA of Worlds, but what was the inspiration for doing the podcast? Obviously, you have you talk about different stuff, but a lot of your podcast is also about debaters. So, what was the inspiration behind that, and where do you see it growing in the future?
Yeah, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak about the shafts. So I think we even spoke about it right at Madrid World. We just said why don't we have a podcast where we talk to some of the best people in the world. And for us, I think just like many things, it's just an idea that floats in your head. So I think one of our biggest inspirations was seeing you guys do it. To be very honest, it was seeing, and I was like, yeah, these guys are doing it, like, and it can be done, right? So we just want to go ahead and also execute it. But the way I like to think about the shaft is, when you think about every space, right? There's always a mouthpiece for the space. There should always be a center where we collect memories, where we collect stories, where people are able to sit down and reflect and discuss things. I think for debating, and especially within the African debating context, we don't have that kind of outlet. And debating in general, there's the culture of being able to write about stuff. Like if you think about sports writing and sports journalism, it's a huge part of the business. It's a huge part of what drives the processes. And I feel a large part of the reason why debate is stuck and is still seen as a niche sport is because we do not have an outlet that begins to speak to the world. So when I think of the shaft, I think of all of these things. And that's why you see us doing like a number of different things, because I say that the interest of debaters is not just with debates. We interact on so many levels. We discuss FPL teams, football, we discuss cricket, we discuss fashion, we do like pop competitions, we do like everything. And there needs to be a medium for debaters to interact on these different levels or on these different platforms. But secondly, debaters have opinion, but that opinion is always stuck within these debate rooms. And in 7 minutes, we come up with some of the most fantastic ideas. And if we see everything going on around the world, some of, I'll say, basically stupid decisions which some world leaders and people in power do take. And I think debaters are some of the smartest people in the world, yet we have no platforms to contribute to them. My experience in the media has shown that some of the people who end up sitting on these radio shows and TV shows basically have no knowledge of these things, but there's a way in which debaters speak to a thing that can add like a good spin on it. So for me, we need to have a platform where we can still speak about other issues, but be able to add the debater's perspective. But lastly, I think if everyone debates, the world becomes a better place. Or if everyone is at least remotely aware of debates, I think maybe this might sound controversial. I think just debating in general has a high propensity to make you a much more moral person. I think if the quality of the argumentation of a society increases, the general quality of their lives is going to increase. Because, for example, if we're discussing within the political realm, no one is going to be using like bad logic. We escape bad logic, we save time over there, and we're already contributing at the highest level. And that's why even at our workplaces, some of the most productive meetings are the ones where the people with the biggest ideas sit together and they're able to interact, because they are operating at the finer the finer margins of logic. And if you operate at that level, and that's why when, even as debaters, when we sit at the bar with beer and things like that, the ideas that we come up with are crazy ideas. And we need to get society to that level. And that comes with being able to train their minds, give them content that is consistently delivering there. And these three things for me are key. So it's about creating a hub where we are able to sell these stories, create an outlet, give debaters the chance to be able to interact. And especially coming from an African perspective, I noticed that the way in which the world sees Africa is significantly different from the way in which we see ourselves. We see ourselves as a society that has existed for a very long period of time. We have legends, we have great people, we have popular people, but they are not exposed to the world. And this is very important. How you see your past, how others see your past is very important for how they see you. If you see me and you think there's nothing behind me, you're going to see me as very small. If someone comes to you for a business deal and you hear he's the son of, I don't know, the CEO of Japan Motors, the way in which you're going to look at him is very, very different from if he was just a CEO starting on his own with no background. So if we're able to tell our rich history, people are going to start engaging us on the basis of that rich history. And now it is not just a nascent society that we need to influence in a way to conform to what we do now, but we would say it is a society that we need to adopt in order to make ourselves better. And those two perspectives are distinct, are very, very different. And for me, it's about pushing that latter. So it's also about painting us in the light which we are more deserving of, and be able to throw more light on some of the good things which we are doing.
You know what you're saying is very inspiring to me because I've been thinking a lot throughout this now more than a year journey of doing this podcast. Why am I doing it? And to be honest, I started on a whim and I've always saw it as something niche. But when I saw more podcasts coming out, yours, I think there was even some others like NA Spar or something like that. Um, a lot of people came to me and were like, "Oh, people are copying you." And I'm like, "Okay, first of all, I'm not the first person to interview debaters, but whatever. Let's get out of the way." But the second thing about it was like, "No, this is great. Like, it's great for our community. If the shaft is super big, then I'm at least a little bit bigger because there's more people in this space. But also, you guys cannot comprehend that if you think about the global picture, and I mentioned this at the start of the podcast when we were talking about it, we need more debaters. We are not enough.
Yes. Yes.
We need to enlarge this community, and we need to start thinking about it as like, oh no, this is not this super niche small thing, but actually put some put some ground into it and understand that this can become bigger. And I've started to become inspired uh, n- to not settle, if that makes sense, for like, oh, there's gonna be this small podcast and just a few random debaters are gonna watch it. No, let's see where it goes. And I'm inspired to keep going. And I might not become like the biggest podcast. It doesn't matter, but seeing that more and more people are doing it is very inspirational and very. Um, it shows me that we can maybe do it and go in the mainstream, if that makes sense. It
Yeah.
might not be
Yeah.
new, it might not be me, but maybe the next person after us could reach out to more people. And who knows, like maybe some people are gonna watch this podcast and be like, what is debating? I'm gonna try and see if there is a club somewhere around. Maybe I'll try it. These guys seem pretty fun, so maybe I'll give it a go. And for me this is a great opportunity to do something bigger than ourselves. And with that, keep the pride and the love of what we are doing to the next generations. Because as you said, for you, it's a journey of like people seeing you in a different light as a debater, as an African debater, in that particular sense. For me, it's similar, but it's also about reaching to different types of people, and um, the conversations that we're having can expand beyond just here's 10 tips on how to deliver better arguments, and here's how you can make your framing a little bit better. Ruman can do that on his channel, so we'll have that as well. But we can preserve the history, we can make it better, and we have this push now of like, when people, I think the community has become a bit more together,
Yeah.
and so with that we need to bring all of the different circuits and realize that we are so different, and that is good. we we,
Yes.
we should we should continue doing it in different ways, but come together for these opportunities that we have on a podcast, on I don't know, TV show. Maybe that's a bit too
Yeah.
much, but there was a debate TV show, I think, in Korea. But that was also great. So I've gone on a bit of a rant, but I think you
Yeah, I
understand where
think
I come from.
I understand where you come from. I think there's a very simple way I think about this. Is debates good? Debates as a product, is it good? If it's good, then the more people who get it, the better for everyone. I think like you said, if we're able to, because even when we talk about debates, the differences in identities, the differences in our stories, and the way we want these things to be highlighted, we don't want it crowded in one place. So I'm also happy. Like I'm actually encouraging everyone should go and start a podcast. It's not hard. Like, and if you come and ask me, I'll show you what you need to do. And but definitely, I was motivated watching what you guys were doing, and obviously we have a vision for ours, and there'll be different visions, but I think there's a way in which all of it align to make the community better and also expand the community.
It's good. I'm excited about it because I don't want to speak no more. But if um, if we can have a form of uh, making sure that we represent what we do in a different light and get more people on board, that's perfect. So
Definitely.
we can rumble even more about this. Um, my last question to you is very simple, Erasmus. Who is the greatest debater of all time?
I this should not be a difficult question for me. I think there are two aspects I see this. I think one from your development, you growing up, and what for you seems to be like the biggest influence on your life or your career, but then also influence on the society. Because I think for me, the definition of a GOAT is not just what you do within the debating room, it's also outside of it. And even for other sports, we do consider it. Like, it's not just about winning tournaments, it's how you are influencing trends, influencing style, etc. For me, it's been a guy called Boachin Yameche Isaac, BNI, and he was my coach and he was my mentor. And for me, he's the greatest debater I've ever seen. His attention to detail and thirst for knowledge is unlike I've ever seen. And it's just a shame, just like a lot of other African debaters, we just didn't get to see them on the international stage. And he has been hugely influential to the debating circuit as a whole, how we debate, our style of debating, more than anyone else I know. And en masse, for me, that makes him enough to be our GOAT. But if we were to go for the normal answers, which I'll say the popular answers, for me, it has to be MDG. Um, I don't know, because like I had a different debate upbringing, like not interacting with the community, just YouTube videos, and what we watched and what I saw was phenomenal. But for me, it was his guts, right? His ability to enter into debates and then dictate the way it goes, and the sheer brilliance and his bravado, and also the longevity, because he stayed in the circuit for so long, won a lot of things and inspired a lot of young people, including myself. And I have respect for a lot of people. I think uh, Dan Lahab for me is also one of the very best. But when I look at MDG and I look at the way I grew up with debates, I cannot betray that conscience. So those two are the goats for me.
Thank you, and it's a great opportunity to shout out some people. Thank you for having a different answer also than most, because like we love Dan, but another Dan will have answer.
Yeah.
We need to keep the debate going for sure.
Exciting, yeah.
Um, for sure, for sure. So at the end of this, I always want to give back the platform to my guests. So, anything you want to shout out, or you want to even ask me, feel free to do it. It's your podcast now.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I wanted to make one point and then one shout out, and maybe a question for you too. But the point I wanted to make was the way in which I think about debating, progress in it, but then even speaking within tournaments, within rooms, etc., and how my career has been, is it's about narratives. I know we speak about framing in the broader sense of debate and like framing as ESL and doing things like that, but that framing also applies to our life, applies to the way in which we think about our careers. And anytime I enter into a room, I always ask myself, even if I have to win that debate, I ask myself, who wins the debate in the eyes of the judge here? There's a narrative, or there's a way in which the story goes where from where I am sitting, I'm able to win the debate. And let me give you an example over here. If, say, I am the underdog, right, and I have three popular teams here, and I'm the team that no one knows, under what circumstances can I win the debate? So if I find that story, then I need to align everything else to fit that story in order to win. And for me, that has been one of the most important things in building my career, and then also doing things within the debate room. It's about finding the story that is most consistent with my abilities and with my beliefs, and forcing that story to stick. So if it's saying that yes, there's someone from this place who can succeed, what does it take for someone from this kind of place to succeed? You must begin to do those things in order to succeed. So these stories or narratives are very, very important for me in order to be able to drive those successes. But the other thing I would like to say is to give a lot of thanks to people who have helped to shape and mold our careers. For me, we will not be here without them. First of all, to the African debating community, these guys are super supportive. Once they see that and when you're a black man, you are not just a single person, you are everyone else, because people live their dreams through you, people see the world through you. So I swear this is true. Sometimes we're just going to debate in an international tournament, and we'll be at the airport and we'll say, oh, we're doing this thing, and the black man would be giving us his support, his love, everything. And for me, this is the unique thing within our community, and we need to keep it going. So shout outs to the African debates community and all of our legends in the BNI, people like Aging, people like Faithfulness, people like Mighty Jamie. Thank you so much. But then also to the international community, people like yourself, Hadar, Ruman, Dylan, Jack Palmer, Harish, Ashish, been very, very helpful towards our debates journey, always giving us advice. The tons of judges who are always giving us advice at these tournaments. It's been incredible how much they've supported us along the way. Um, Finally, just listen to the shaft. I wanted to ask Nikki, uh, how did your institution take the shout outs you gave to them at the finals of WDC in Madrid? Did they ever hear? Did they respond? I'm just curious as to what consequences, or were you just a bad boy and you got away with it?
I don't think they cared, and that's kind of the point I was making. You know, so I don't have a good story to tell here. If you're wondering what Erasmus is asking about, you can watch the start of my speech at Madrid WDC final. Um, but I guess the takeaway from that is that I am that's one of the moments that I guess will define my debating, is that I always did it for myself, and I really wanted to be above of the institutions and the mainstream of it and all of those things. And it was my little last rebellion against the system, which um, which is how I like to go about life. So let's leave it at
That's
that.
very impressive. That's very, very impressive. I want to be like you when I grow up.
Likewise, likewise. Maybe when I grow up, I'll have as many subscribers as the Shaft. So there's that. All right, all right. Thank you, man.
Great.
It's been a
Thank you
wild
so much,
journey.
Nikki.
With there was a little bit more questions that I wanted to ask, but maybe we'll do it again. Maybe we'll go back to the Shaft, and we'll do something there as well. Let's leave a little bit for the imagination, and when we get to it, we get to it. And until then, have a nice one.
You too. Thank you so much for having me. Safe.